Before I started working in international organizations, I thought it was a dreamland for someone who wanted to have an impactful career. In my head, international organizations were a place of moral compass, equality, diversity, impartiality, a place where all member states contributed to making the world a better place. And then I started working in international organizations. My name is Viola, and I worked at the EU, UN, and the OECD, and I started IOReady, International Organizations Ready, to share my knowledge, tips, and insider insights about working in international organizations. Today, we are covering a topic related to things I wish I knew before I started working in international organizations because I was shocked by a couple of them. So, if you're interested in this topic, if you either work in international organizations or want to work in international organizations, you're more than welcome to continue watching. The first thing that I wish I knew before working in international organizations is that not everyone is brilliant. And that was shocking to me. I thought that people working in international organizations, because of all of the trainings that I needed to go through, all of the university degrees, languages, and rigid recruitment process that I needed to go through, I was expecting everyone else to be on a super high level in terms of quality of their work. But I was really surprised with my first experience of working in international organizations to see that that's actually not the case. People are not always good at what they do. People don't always do what they're supposed to do. And at the very beginning, I couldn't really understand why that is because people do go through the rigid recruitment processes. They do have excellent education and they do have multicultural experiences. So, how is it possible that some people just don't do their work properly? Some people don't actually have very good qualifications, but a lot of people fall into this very interesting trap that I found out while working in international organizations. If you have received a permanent contract, so a contract that basically guarantees you a job until the rest of time, until your retirement, people sometimes don't want to work anymore. And there is no way of actually kicking them out of the international organization. And unfortunately, I did have a chance of working with people like that who did have the skills, but just didn't want to do the job that they were supposed to. And this is called a permanent contract trap, where people do as little as possible to basically keep their jobs and keep some pretenses, but they don't do the 100% that they're supposed to. Because of that, people are actually less inclined to perform as best as possible, making other people's lives and work so much more difficult. So I was really surprised that that was actually the case because people who want to work in international organizations are usually driven by impact. So I was expecting everyone working in international organizations to be constantly passionate about what they do. I was really surprised to see that that was not the case. So that was definitely something that I wish I knew before coming because my expectations about my work environment and people that I would have been working with would have been very different to what I have made in my imagination to be. Another point to that is that there is a hierarchy of international organizations, and some international organizations are considered to be better than some of the other ones. And spoiler alert, UN is not the best organization to work for. And some UN agencies are considered the worst to work with, and people literally avoid applying for positions in these agencies because of how bad the reputation is. The second thing I wish I knew about working in international organization is that everything depends on the budget. And listen, I knew that budget is a big thing in international organizations, but I don't think I comprehended what that actually meant. And it means everything. What you do, how you do things, with whom you do things, whether you're overworked because there is not enough resources to either employ other people or actually pay for services that will make your work faster, or doing extra work to compensate for the resources that you don't have and therefore need to perform yourself. Your reality working in international organizations depends completely on your budget. That was true from me in the three organizations that I have worked with at the EU, at the UN, and at the OECD. All three of them had the same rules. Your work plan is aligned with your priorities and member states' requests, but also with the budget that you have dedicated for that particular project. But it also works the other way around. So, for example, if you have a lot of budget, you need to spend it. And very often that means that you're either able to take on some new project or you're able to dedicate a bigger budget to higher quality products. But sometimes it also means that you need to spend the money that you don't know how to spend. And I have heard over and over again from my colleagues working for the UN, for example, driving around villages in circles to spend the fuel money that has been dedicated to a particular project. The budget also determines contracts. So if there is no budget, no matter how well you perform, you're not going to get a new contract. If international organizations are interesting to you, I have made a video explaining what international organizations are, what are their characteristics, and how can we classify them. So if you're interested in that, you can click the link in here. The third thing I wish I knew about working in international organizations is that politics is everywhere. Yes, I did think that international organizations will be impartial, and oh boy, was I wrong. Politics is everywhere, from who and how people are recruited for what positions, to office politics, and to the examples of good practices that you use for your published papers. Politics is everywhere. By being in an international organization, you constantly maneuver through the international, national, and office politics. And that can get really complicated. Member states can buy positions for their nationals, which they do very often on high level positions. And some member states are way better at doing that than some of the others, which you can see very clearly when working in international organizations. Office politics includes who gets what budget from which member states. So there is competition over resources within the same directorate and even within and between smaller teams. You do have personalities, so then you have individual politics between who wants to do what kinds of jobs, and that also affects on the atmosphere in international organizations. And you also have the techniques to make the member states happy, which is also a part of diplomacy and politics, including, for example, when writing a paper, you pick good examples or lessons learned from the member states that are paying for the reports that you are writing. And again, that is something that I had no idea about. I thought I can be honest in my papers. I thought that out of all of the possible sectors, international organizations were the ones where you could avoid politics. No, big mistake. The fourth thing I wish I knew about international organizations is that your performance is not tied to your salary or promotion. And that was a big shocker for me. This was a very hard realization, even though the majority of people who work in international organizations are not necessarily motivated by finances. It's also very frustrating where it works the other way around, where you put so much effort into what you do and improving the impact that you want to have in the world, and then not getting at all financially rewarded for it. Being promoted or getting a higher salary very often is not tied to how well you perform, but maybe to how much time you have spent in an organization, or if you have been lucky to transition into a different team. It's not at all related to negotiations of your salary on many posts. The promotion system is very slow. It takes many years to graduate from one position to the other position. And very often, availability to have that position is tied to somebody else leaving that position or a budget, as we have discussed before. So, prolongation of your contract depends in so many different aspects externally on the organization, not on you and what you can do for the job and how you have performed your job so far. Let me clarify though, because there is a lot of different types of contracts in international organizations, which, yes, I am going to make a video about very soon. So stay tuned and subscribe if you're interested in that topic. Your performance is not associated with how much money you make or what kind of promotions or jobs or projects you get. And that is a big difference from the private sector, where your performance is very, very, very tied to how much money and what kind of opportunities you have. In international organizations, you don't. And I have actually seen a lot of young professionals with 3, 5 years of experience leaving international organizations exactly for that reason. They have been working so well, so hard for so many years with no financial benefits, even though, yet again, this is not the primary motivation for working in international organizations. But not having that financial synchronicity with the effort that you've been putting in is insane. And I wish someone told me that before I started working in international organizations. The fifth thing that I wish I knew about working in international organizations is that diversity is a myth. I know it's a really big statement, and I know that international organizations are making a lot of efforts to promote themselves as diverse friendly. However, there is many different types of diversity, and international organizations are not handling it well. Yes, we do have more women in international organizations and more women in positions of power in international organizations. But what about other genders? What about other communities? What about nationality issue, which is such a huge thing in international organizations? And even with nationalities, I find that the perspectives represented in international organizations are controlled by a couple of universities. And that's one of the biggest points that I wanted to make. I have noticed that the majority of people working in international organizations do come from these elite universities, especially in the past 10 years, because before then, degrees in international relations did not really exist. And people working in international organizations now who have 30, 40, 50 years of experience, they do come from a variety of backgrounds. But in the past 10 years, people, junior professionals who work in international organizations, they very often come from Sciences Po, from LSE, from King's College, from Oxford, Harvard, from top universities. And the thing is that if you come from Togo, Australia, or Uruguay, and you have graduated from Sciences Po, you still have a very similar mindset. You think about problems in the same way, and you think about solutions that are quite traditional. And because of the placement and culture of these universities set in a Western world, when we talk about development or when we talk about global issues, we cannot just have voices from the global north. And the identification of the problem is the same. The solutions are not innovative enough. And yes, I do say all this as someone who did graduate from Sciences Po. For me, the ultimate diversity factor is when people come not only from different countries, from different genders, but also with different perspectives. And we don't have that enough. And I have seen that working in 3 different organizations, which has been a shame. My mission with iAlready is to provide the knowledge, tips, and insider information for people who want to work in international organizations, because I truly believe that it benefits the world. It benefits the international organizations, the policies that we're making, and the way in which we change that world. If you're interested in working in international organizations, whether you're at the beginning of your career or trying to transition into the international organizations or NGOs sector, I invite you to have a look at the online course for IOs and NGOs that I have developed for my clients, and people have been extremely happy with it and ended up working at the OECD and other various IOs and NGOs around the world. Let me know if you'd like to see part 2 of the things that I wish I knew before I started working in international organizations. And do comment down below if any of the points that I have raised resonated with you, whether you have worked in international organizations and noticed the same trends, or have you not yet worked in international organizations, and if any of these points shocked you the way that I have been shocked when I first started working in international organizations. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.